In this video, we are going to look at how the Power of Siberia pipelines are creating an unprecedented energy alignment between China and Russia. You'll discover why this alliance matters, how it weakens Europe and the US, and what it means for future gas markets. Stay with us, because this shift is bigger, deeper, and more strategic than most people realize. For decades, the world's energy map was predictable. Europe relied heavily on Russian gas, and Russia relied on Europe's massive market to project influence and secure revenue. That relationship shaped global diplomacy, trade, and entire national strategies. But everything changed after 2022. Political fractures, sanctions, and the collapse of trust severed Russia's access to its most lucrative customers almost overnight. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away, China was confronting a very different challenge. Its insatiable demand for energy was rising faster than domestic production, making long-term stability a top priority. Two massive forces were moving in opposite directions. One losing buyers, the other searching for certainty. When their paths collided, the result wasn't just a deal. It was the beginning of a quiet realignment with worldwide consequences. The first major turning point in this energy shift is the Power of Siberia, often referred to as POS-1. This enormous pipeline snakes through the harsh landscapes of eastern Russia, carrying natural gas from Siberia's vast fields all the way to northeastern China. After years of construction and negotiation, China completed the final link of the system in late 2024. A stretch of more than 5,000 kilometers that runs from Nantong to Luji in Jiangsu province. This isn't a symbolic milestone. It's the moment the pipeline finally transforms into a fully interconnected, fully operational artery of energy. Once it reaches full capacity in 2025, POS-1 is set to deliver about 38 billion cubic meters of gas annually. To put that into perspective, that's nearly a tenth of China's entire natural gas consumption. In a world where energy security determines economic stability, that number is enormous. It provides China not only with fuel, but with something far more valuable: leverage. You might wonder, with Europe no longer buying Russian gas at previous levels and China securing long-term contracts at stable prices, who really emerges as the new power player in global energy? Just when the world began adjusting to POS-1, another development emerged that pushes the story into even more dramatic territory. As of late 2025, Gazprom and China's state-owned CNPC signed a binding agreement to advance a second pipeline project, known as Power of Siberia 2. If the first pipeline was significant, this one is monumental. POS-2 is planned to run from Russia's resource-rich Yamal Peninsula, cut across Mongolia, and arrive in northern China. This second pipeline could supply up to 50 billion cubic meters of additional gas every year. Think about that. It nearly doubles Russia's pipeline exports to China. When combined with POS-1 and other routes already in the works, analysts estimate China could soon receive more than 100 billion cubic meters of Russian gas annually. This isn't an incremental adjustment. It's a complete reorientation of global energy flows, one of the biggest in modern history. Some experts have gone as far as calling POS-2 the most capital-intensive gas project in the world, not just because of its scale, but because of the strategic gamble behind it. And here's where the story gets even more intriguing. The West isn't simply watching, it's bracing for the consequences. You might be wondering, how does one pipeline destabilize global energy markets that have been dominated by the West for decades? The answer is more dramatic than you might expect. When POS-1 and POS-2 are viewed together, they form more than an engineering marvel. They form a geopolitical weapon, one that doesn't rely on military strength, but on the steady flow of energy. For China, these pipelines are a dream scenario. They provide a stable overland supply of gas that cannot be easily disrupted by maritime tensions, blockades, or international sanctions. In an era where global shipping routes are increasingly vulnerable, China is building protected corridors that bypass the world's busiest and most contested waters. Russia, on the other hand, finds itself in a new position. After losing access to the European market, it now depends heavily on China as its largest and most reliable buyer. In geopolitical terms, that's a reversal of roles. Europe once held the upper hand in gas negotiations with Russia. Now, China is poised to assume that role. But the shockwaves don't stop there. If China begins relying less on liquefied natural gas, which is shipped across oceans, Western LNG markets could suffer. The United States, Australia and Gulf countries have invested billions into expanding LNG export capacity under the assumption that China would always remain a top buyer. These assumptions may turn out to be dangerously outdated. The big question becomes, if pipelines replace tankers and Asia becomes the main destination for Russian gas, how will global energy politics reshape itself? The recent signing of the POS2 memorandum reveals a subtle but critical detail. China controls the negotiation table. The agreements outline broad commitments, yet key terms, especially pricing, remain unsigned. This delay isn't accidental, it's leverage. By taking its time, China forces Russia into a position where it must accept more favorable terms in exchange for guaranteed long-term demand. This dynamic gives China an extraordinary advantage. It secures discounted, dependable gas for decades. Gas that remains immune to many of the external pressures that typically destabilize energy markets. It also allows China to dictate the pace and rhythm of Russian exports, granting Beijing a level of influence that Western nations once enjoyed. This is more than energy independence. It's geopolitical insurance. And here's the question that makes analysts uneasy. If China can lock down its energy supply on land, beyond the reach of Western naval power, does that mean traditional Western influence in the region is fading for good? The more you examine the situation, the more it becomes clear that this isn't simply a commercial partnership. It's a strategic realignment unfolding in real time. By the time POS2 becomes fully operational, likely in the early 2030s, the consequences will be profound and far-reaching. One immediate impact is on global LNG demand, particularly from China, the world's largest energy consumer. If China shifts more of its consumption from costly seaborne LNG to inexpensive overland Russian gas, LNG exporters around the globe will face shrinking markets. Projects that were previously considered safe bets for decades may suddenly struggle to justify their massive investments. The shift from shipping to overland pipelines is transforming global energy security. For decades, naval choke points like the Strait of Hormuz or the South China Sea gave maritime powers significant influence over energy flows. But pipelines bypass these vulnerable routes entirely, shifting power away from naval dominance and toward long-term infrastructure, cross-border contracts, and diplomatic alignment. As a result, Western pressure tools, sanctions, LNG pricing, and naval presence gradually lose effectiveness, replaced by broader geopolitical negotiations. For Russia, this pivot provides a vital economic lifeline. With Europe no longer a reliable market, China emerges as a guaranteed customer, stabilizing Russian revenue and reducing exposure to Western influence. For China, the benefits are equally strategic. A secure, predictable and affordable energy supply, insulated from maritime disruptions. Together, the two powers are forming a new axis of energy cooperation that could reshape global influence for decades. Yet the deeper impact lies beyond energy itself. By 2035, China is expected to receive over 100 billion cubic meters of Russian gas annually through robust overland pipelines, sharply reducing its dependence on LNG imports. This weakens global LNG demand, disrupts exporters, and diminishes the importance of maritime shipping routes that once defined the energy economy. At the same time, Russia's reorientation away from Europe erodes old power dynamics. Europe's leverage over Moscow declines, while China gains increased influence over pricing, supply stability, and Russia's economic decisions. This marks a quiet but profound geopolitical shift. Pipelines like Power of Siberia 1 and 2 operate far beyond their technical purpose. They are strategic assets that extend China's reach, reinforce the China-Russia economic corridor, and reshape diplomacy. Nations once aligned with Western energy systems reconsider their positions, while China strengthens its economic resilience through long-term, low-cost energy contracts. Ultimately, these pipelines redefine influence without conflict, reshaping global power beneath the surface. How do you think these pipelines will reshape global energy by 2035?